is also one of our he's been with the club longer than I, so that means by my definition you're a founding member. And one of our core folks who's always here, always enthusiastic, always supportive, and also our technical guru. So because of part of his thing with tech is he loves all things that are mechanical, etc. And also when you talk about science and electricity, there's often the talk of spirits. And so today his talk is What the Ghost Sheriff of Montana Told Me. And just so you know, my sister was born in Montana and I lived there for 5 years as a child. And his speech is 10 to 12 minutes. We're going to give him 10 to 15, I think. Is that what we agreed?
We said 12 to 15.
12 to 15. Okay, so you're going to get your tips at 12, 13, and 15, right? All right. Keith, please tell us all about the Ghost Sheriff.
Okay. Good morning, Toastmasters. I actually don't have that much time. There's a lot of history. So quick, paranormal is not normal. It's outside of natural and science and what we think, and anything outside of that is paranormal. I was going to do a speech on miracles because I have a paranormal way to do miracles. I believe in miracles. Then I thought, I don't know. And Bannack says, well, I'll just tell a ghost story. Okay, so back to ghost story. You might have this little ghost story in this story I've actually told you before. So who believes in paranormal? If something exists. Okay, everybody. How about ghost? Oh, just about everybody. How about happen to themselves? Oh, encountered a couple of them. Okay, good. Because, you see, if I told you a ghost story, that's just a story that someone told me. And if I'm telling you that story, it's like, oh, yeah. But if I said, oh, something happened to me, the ghost, and then there's an interest, you might think, he's good. But there's still that, oh, tell me all about it. So here it is. This story centers in a town called Bannack. It was named after the Native Americans Bannack, but they misspelt it, the government, and that's Bannack, ever since 1862 when Abraham Lincoln was president, and he just ran and he didn't have to run over and over. So he was elected, and elected the second time actually. Now, in 1862, way up north in Montana, now this is the southwestern part of Montana for the Montanians. 1862, these two guys, one of them I think is John White, they're prospectors. This is the kind where they have the pan prospected. They're prospectors and they're looking for this gold stuff, just little nuggets here and there, little crumbs. And they decided, you know what, let's prospect for some tobacco money. Get a little tobacco. So they go to this little Grasshopper Creek, named because there's grasshoppers. And they pan in Grasshopper Creek and a lot. And they, this is a lot. And they get a sage brush and they pull it up, and the root system of the sage plant had all this gold in it. So they claimed a claim on Grasshopper Creek. Now, claims, wildfire, everyone finds out. You get a claim, you have this little area. So everybody floods, it's called the gold rush. Everybody floods to that area in the gold rush, and there's a little town that develops, Bannack. And it booms to 3,000 people in a year. And this is a lot in the Old West. They all get panning for gold, and they figure the amount of gold that came out of Bannack was about $5 million. Now, that's a lot in 1800s money. And if that gold went, this is Abraham Lincoln, that side of the Mississippi, the Civil War is going on. If this money went to the north or went to the south, it would change the war who won. So it was gold. Now, in Bannack, there's it went to 3,000 people. There was a sheriff, because this story really is about the sheriff and the town Bannack, and a lot about the sheriff. This sheriff guy, he was originally from the East Coast, was over in California as a marshal. He gets in a shootout, and so he's in prison in San Quentin, but because of health, he's released. Now he's traveling. And somebody's after him, Cleveland, and he travels to Bannack. And he becomes elected sheriff because he's actually very amenable person. He just gets along with everybody. And he was a sheriff, he was a very good sheriff. They hanged him and his deputies. Oh gosh. And now, when I first went to this ghost town, all the buildings are there. It's not reconstructed. It's preserved or conserved. It's the original buildings. There's a saloon. There's a courthouse, which became the hotel. There's a Mason building, which is a one-room schoolhouse. There's all these buildings and a saloon too. Let's mention that. And when I went there the first time, I went up to this Mead Hotel, the first red brick building, which was originally going to be a courthouse, because it was the first territorial capital of Montana. So this Mead Hotel, at one point in time, it's turned into a motel. Carriages would come up with the horses, and they would unload there. And someone kept telling me, there's the ghost of the little girl in the blue dress, the little girl in the blue dress. I'm like, okay. Sure. The stairs go up the stairs, and this is 3:30 in the afternoon. This is 15-foot ceilings inside. No furniture, nothing. Just two other guys are way up in front of me, about 20, 30 feet. And I'm just like with a little camera, like, to kind of get the whole building. And this ghost story is a little like, how can I refute it? If you're standing in a room, imagine nothing around you, and somebody taps you on the shoulder. I mean, literally taps you on the shoulder. And you turn, and there's absolutely no one there. Everywhere, nothing. This was on that level, except it was a voice. And it wasn't a little girl in a blue dress. It was a man's voice saying, "Can you help me out?" I turned, and there's no one there. Oh, so I'm going like, I don't know. If I tell this story, people are going to think I'm crazy. So let me reverse back to the history. Here's Bannack, the town, 2,000 to 3,000 people. The sheriff gets elected. They hanged him. Why? Why did they hang him? Well, back in them days, if there was a dispute, they had this miners' court. So everybody would listen to the dispute. Everybody, all the miners, outside in the street, which is a dirt, they would draw a line in the dirt. And if you agreed with that person, you'd go on that side. If you disagreed, you'd go on that side. Literally, that's the miners' court. Until President Lincoln, who was Lincoln at the time, appointed judges to the territory. So a territorial judge came in, Sidney Anderson. He comes trotting in this little horse and buggy with his wife. We got a territorial judge. Now they can have actual juries, which, that's another story. But the wife wanted to write to the East Coast about the Wild West, because this is the Wild West times. So she writes to the East Coast and writes these fantastical stories about 106 people were killed, and it's so lawless. Her husband's the judge. And all this stories. And there's a gang that's organized called the Road Agents. They call themselves the Innocents and all this, and they're stealing people's gold transports. And this story got into circulation. So now, during that time, in actuality, there must have been about 6 murders all total. 3 of them were like off in Oregon. Some guy went cuckoo with an axe. But there was one kid that got killed, and they investigated it, and they said, well, these 5 characters which were in Virginia City, were 2 days away, horse ride, Virginia City. They went there, and they rounded up 5 people they didn't like, the rapscallion types. It's like, okay, you're guilty, hang them all. So they hanged 5 people, right? Well, one of them, of course, if you're about to get hanged, you don't want to be hanged. I'll tell you who's really responsible. And they say a name. So they hang those 5. They go after this name of this guy down at Rattlesnake Creek. Names. They go down to Rattlesnake Creek into the cabin and they roust this guy. And they hang him right outside in the rafters. And he's like, no, I didn't do it. And they hang him. And conveniently, in his pocket, oh my gosh, there's a piece of paper. And they open up, look, it's a list of everybody on the road agent gang that's robbing everybody. It's got the president of the gang, the secretary, the treasurer, and they got this convenient list. And on top of that list is Sheriff Henry Plummer, who everyone kind of liked, and he was doing actually a good job. He had a couple of silver gold mines off to the side. So they went after the sheriff and his 2 deputies, and they just hanged him in Bannack on his own gallows, which he constructed right in sight of the 1st Territorial Jail, which was a little adobe house. He said, oh gosh. And so from there, they continued on their rampage spree with vigilantes because they wanted to control the gold for the north instead of it going to the south, or vice versa. I think it was, whatever it was. Now, back in them days, Montana, it's very cold, and they couldn't put shovel into the ground. So they had to wait till summer to bury the sheriff. So they had to put the body someplace. So it was the foundation with a couple of poles and maybe a tent thing. They put them at the foundation of the new courthouse, which wasn't built yet, and later became the Mead Hotel. So things start to click. You see, the little girl in the blue dress, 1916, 3 little girls went into the Grasshopper Creek, which at that time they had dredged because they're going for every little bit of gold left. So this very deep Grasshopper Creek, and the 3 little girls drowned. One of them, Dorothy Dunn, is the little girl in the blue dress who hung out in the Mead Hotel up on the 2nd story, way in the back in that room with the balcony, which is, if you go up there now, the room is locked. You can't go in there. It's like, oh, okay, kept Dorothy in lock and key. So there's Dorothy Dunn. It's very cold. I'm in there, I looked inside the Mead Hotel and there was the, can you help me out? But it wasn't the little girl in the blue dress. Bannack is an old ghost town, which means abandoned, but it is a haunted one. They have Bannack days that they celebrate back in the time that in those days. They have Ghost Walk in October. I participated in the Ghost Walk. I'm dressed as a ghost miner. What are you doing here, you rapscallions? And this little groups of people at night in Montana, 6 degrees out. I'm bundled up and my toes are still freezing, and this Coleman lantern, and doing this little skit. And I would wait for them to do their little skit, which involves somebody coming out of a house, and they come down here. I'm up, here comes the group. One night, I'm sitting there like shivering in my little ghost costume, beard and all. And these 2 little girls, like 6th grade, come, like 4th grade maybe, come running up. They're scared. I thought they were shivering because they were cold. I'm like, here's the lantern, go like this to the Coleman. It's a little bit of heat. And they're like, just before that, I heard a big boom, 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 as if someone's throwing down luggage down the stairs. Over that direction. I'm like, what the heck's happening with that skit? So they were supposed to have some little skit, and these 2 guys were supposed to come out of this house. So they were in a house, 2 guys. And this boom, boom, boom scared out of them, and they came out of the house going, what the heck? The little girls came over my direction going, there's that ghost thing. And it was the boom, boom, boom. And they go, oh. Is that real or not? I don't know. Dorothy Dunn, the little girl in the balloon test? I don't know. There's many stories about her. You'll always hear that one. But what always comes up is that the sheriff. Because I didn't know that they had placed that body on the courthouse, which was now the Mead Hotel. So if you want location, that would have been the spot where I heard the over-the-shoulder voice going, "Can you help me out?" Was the spot where he was like stored for the winter. So I think my point is the ghost story, right, has a lot of much more interest when you know the background behind it. So it's the story, the first-hand account, yeah, but it's the whole history behind it. So is Bannack haunted? Probably. A lot of people will say yes, but I can't refute. I'm in the middle of the day. It's sunlit room, big spaces, and it's like, huh? I wasn't thinking of some sheriff, but he wanted to have me help him out. Thank you.
Thank you as always, sir. All right, everyone, please take a minute or two to write your feedback for our illustrious speaker.
And it was a generous tour that we made.
I noticed that. I had my watch on.